So, I'm back, and as you can tell by the title of this video, it is my Ballon d'Or rankings, or who I think is going to win the Ballon d'Or for the 2025, because the ceremony is coming up very quickly. It's actually very rapidly approaching, but anyways, I'm going to go through all 30 of the nominees. Some of them I don't agree with even being on the list, in my personal opinion, but I mean, they're there. So I'm going to rank them. I'm going to start in 30th and go all the way up to who I think the eventual winner should be. And I will also go over what I expect to happen. But obviously, I'm a Barcelona fan. I am a little bit biased towards my Barcelona players. But of course, it's the players that I watch the most. So I will lean towards more of their players, but I will still try to be unbiased as possible, while also putting in my personal opinion for each player. I'm not going to go too in depth for everything. I will focus more on the higher end. But with that being said, let's jump into the 30 nominees. It is unfortunate who I have in 30th place, and people may call me biased for this. I genuinely don't think it's biased, and I didn't originally have him in 30th place, but after just thinking about it a little bit more, he has had a wonderful season. I think he does deserve to be in the top 30, but I will say he had a rather lackluster season. So I'm gonna say, he has had one of the worst seasons based off of the rest of the players on this list, and I'm gonna go with Denzel Dumfries in 30th place. I know he had a wonderful goal contribution season so far. I mean, overall, Inter Milan were unfortunate not to win any trophies this season. They were close to winning the Serie A, close to winning the Coppa Italia, and close to winning the Champions League final up until they faced PSG, of course. They even knocked out my precious Barcelona, but he had a crucial part to play to make it all the way to the final. So you have to say that he is among the top 30 players. It just has to say. In 29th place, I have Cole Palmer. I really enjoy this player. He's absolutely phenomenal, but I have to say, last season wasn't his greatest. It really wasn't. I mean, especially not compared to his first season in Chelsea. At Chelsea, the first season was absolutely incredible. He broke out even more so than he already did back in Man City. But in this second season, it was plagued a little bit by injuries, plus Chelsea was in the Conference League, not in the Champions League. He didn't play many Conference League games. While they did win it, and they even did win the Club World Cup, which should be mentioned, I forgot about it, and that might have pushed him up a little bit higher, but regardless, Cole Palmer still had a pretty decent season, and I think he should be considered in the top 30, just a little bit on the lower end. But yeah. In 28th, I have Lautaro Martinez. Very similar to the whole Denzel Dumfries, I think Lautaro Martinez had a pretty lackluster season in his own standards, for his own standards, should I say. Serie A wasn't that many goals that he scored, but in the Champions League, he did return a pretty decent amount. I believe it was 8 or 9 goals, and obviously they made it all the way to the final. Unfortunately, again, crashed out to the best team in the world at the time, and the eventual winner, PSG. Still, they did a fantastic job. I mean, he even scored against Barcelona, if I'm not mistaken, in the semifinals. So, congrats to Lautaro Martinez. Maybe he can have an even better season now, but I think he deserves to be there, but it's a little bit of a strain. He could be lower, but I'm going to place him at 28, possibly because of name tags and because he's an attacker. But another attacker that does have a little bit of name tags that definitely was shot up a little bit. I originally had him in 30th, but I moved him up a few spots. You can call me biased for this one, but I genuinely think he didn't have that good of a season, and I honestly not really sure why he's even on the top 30. I think he shouldn't be, and I know that should mean I put him in 30th, but I don't know, I give him a few extra points because his goal involvements were a little bit more than I expected. It is Vinicius Jr. He did have a okay season, a lot better than most other people, but from Ballon d'Or contender, arguably should have been the Ballon d'Or winner last season or last year, to a lackluster performance. Yes, he did get a lot of goal involvements. I believe it was over 20 goals and over 15 assists, which is really good from an attacker, mostly a left winger. But you can tell that it wasn't the vintage Vinny that we're used to seeing. Hence why I have him so low. Could easily be even lower. Could even be off my list if I'm being completely honest. But I will give it to them. Vinny Jr., 27th place. I think it's decent, but I wouldn't be shocked if he was placed higher in real life. Moving on to his teammate, it is Jude Bellingham. I could easily put him a little bit higher, but I'm not going to because, again, he did have a little bit of a downward season. Again, he was a Ballon d'Or contender last year. Very similar situation to Vinny Jr., but he did play a little bit more of a defensive role this time around, yet he still contributed with a decent amount of goals. So we're going to say that that was a pretty good season, and I think he does deserve to be on this top 30. But again, on the lower end of the just rankings, hence why I have him 26th. It should be a little bit higher, but and he will be a lot higher, I think. But he definitely had a better season than Vinicius Jr., especially because of the role that he had. I mean, with Kylian Mbappe coming in, he took more of the limelight, took it away kind of from Jude Bellingham and Vinicius Jr. But can he be higher? Should I have put him higher? Maybe. But once you see the rest of the players that I say, you might think differently. Because my next player is actually a player that I love, absolutely adore, and would love him to join Barcelona, is Erling Haaland. Yes, he had a pretty down season last time around, and I will be saying that for quite a few players on this list, to be honest. But I mean, Man City overall weren't great last season. But yet, Erling Haaland still scored a decent amount of goals. I believe it was over 30 goals. Didn't get that many assists, but still, he's an absolute robot. Can score many goals. Can score in many games, should I say, but he was a little bit absent for the big games, especially in the Champions League. Didn't see him much. Did score a few goals, but still wasn't enough. I mean, they lost out, to be fair, to Real Madrid, but in the playoffs very early on. And, I mean, they should easily make top 8. They should have made top 8 last season, and they didn't. So, a little bit lackluster season, and they barely made top 4 in the Premier League. They are in the Champions League, thankfully, but Erling Haaland's got to step it up, and he has been this season so far. So, good luck maybe in the 2026 Ballon d'Or. Moving on to another striker who had less goals but had better performances in my personal opinion, especially in the Champions League. I'm talking about Serhou Guirassy. Guirassy had an absolutely outstanding season despite being in a underwhelming Borussia Dortmund team that didn't make it too far. I mean, they made the quarterfinals, lost to Barcelona, who obviously made it all to the semis, but then Guirassy actually scored a hat-trick versus us and still also was the top goal scorer alongside Rafinha in the Champions League. That's a really good return, not to mention how many goals he scored in the Bundesliga. He was impressive. In a somewhat bad season for Dortmund, he was a shining light, and thankfully he's still there, so hopefully Dortmund can actually do something with a very top striker who I would argue had a better season than Haaland, hence why I placed him one place higher. Moving on to number 23, I do have another midfielder who won the Premier League. So you can already take a guess as to who that is. It is, of course, Alexis Mac Allister. I would argue that he may not have been the best midfielder in that Liverpool side, but I honestly think he was. He's a little bit underrated in the sense that what he does isn't goal scoring, isn't really assists. It's more of the hard work that he puts in, the harsh tackles that he puts in, and just overall keeps the ball moving and keeps the game going and just helps Liverpool to a Premier League title like they did. Unfortunately, they did crash out rather early in the Champions League, which was just, I mean, unlucky because they did face PSG, who eventually went on to win it. Thankfully for them, it looks a little bit better on them that they lost to the eventual winners. But still, losing in the round of 16 for a big team like Liverpool, it's rather unfortunate. But Alexis Mac Allister should still get his flowers. I feel like a 23rd place finish is not too bad, but he probably deserves to finish a little bit higher. And another one that may be a little bit controversial, I do have my first PSG player, of course, first of many. I have Desiree Doué. He had a fantastic breakout season this time around. Of course, in PSG, there's a lot of star talent, especially up front, but he did do a really good job, especially in the Champions League when they called upon him. I believe he scored against Aston Villa. Great goal, and then scored in the final, if I'm not mistaken. He was absolutely phenomenal in that game. I mean, it was I think he might have been man of the match in the Champions League final, so you gotta give credit to where credit's due, but I feel like in the first half of the season, it wasn't great for him. And we cannot forget about the first half of the season. He was okay, getting some minutes, and of course, Dembele, Kvaratskhelia didn't come in until the second half of the season, but I mean, Barcola. But eventually, he did take it away from Barcola, and Barcola is not even on the top 30, which I think that's a good thing. I'm glad Barcola isn't on here because I feel like Desiree Doué did have a better season than him, and had a slightly better season than the rest of the players that I've mentioned so far, but worse, a little bit worse than the next players. Speaking of the next few players, I am going to be talking about Serie A's MVP, and if you don't know who that was of course Scott McTominay. He had a fantastic season. I mean, he won the Scudetto title with underrated and overall a little bit of an underdog side of Napoli, of course, led by Antonio Conte. But Scott McTominay was the main guy for them. He was incredible. I mean, he even dyed his hair blue to celebrate the Scudetto title alongside his Scottish teammate in Billy Gilmore. But he was the main leader in this side. He was fantastic. He scored goals. He provided assists, but also provided all that hard work in midfield that is necessary for a championship, for champions a victorious side like Napoli was last season. So congrats to him, and he should definitely be finishing in and among these places due to his fantastic season. In the 21st spot, it is Florian Wirtz. We cannot forget about how good this player was in the first half of the season. Of course, he got injured towards the middle, and unfortunately, Bayer Leverkusen, his side was knocked out by Bayern Munich quite handedly so, but he was out injured for those games. Who knows what would have happened if he was playing those games? Maybe it wouldn't have made much of a difference, but maybe it could have been a little bit more of a respectable finish for them. And of course, now Bayer Leverkusen have been quite ripped to shreds, especially in the fact that Florian Wirtz has left to join Liverpool, reigning Premier League champions. Florian Wirtz, I cannot exaggerate how many goals and assists he did. Not only that, just overall the creative plays that he would make and just be that catalyst to everything good for Bayer Leverkusen. He was the number 10 for a reason, put on a pretty decent performance in the Champions League, especially in the league phase, but also in the Bundesliga. We cannot forget about that. Helped them finish in the Champions League place and eventually, lead Bayer Leverkusen to be a decent side that we should all respect. Unfortunately, a little less so now with their performances that they're putting on this season. But still, Florian Wirtz deserves a lot of credit and should be in this place. I think it's very solid. Moving on into 19th place, we do have another striker who I think is one of the best strikers in the world, who has recently gotten moved. It is Viktor Gyökeres. I am a huge fan of Viktor Gyökeres. He's one of my favorite strikers in the world right now, alongside Erling Haaland. But I will say Viktor Gyökeres had a better season than Haaland, better than Guirassy. I mean, he scored over 50 goals. Yes, it was for Sporting CP, but you gotta give credit where credit's due, man. He scored 54 goals in 52 appearances, while providing quite a few assists as well. Also did it in the Champions League, scored, I believe, 6 goals in the Champions League for a Portuguese side that didn't make it far in the campaign, and also even scored a hat-trick versus a Manchester City. Yes, he may not score always against the big teams like a Benfica or Porto, which are the biggest teams in Portugal, but still did a pretty decent job in the Champions League. We cannot forget about that. And he got himself a move to Arsenal. I think it's very impressive. We cannot discredit all the work that he's done. If he had what else can he do for Sporting? He has to put out 100 goals a season, 100 goals to even be in the conversation for a Ballon d'Or? I don't think so. I think he deserves a place in the top 30 and deserves a pretty mid-level. If he scored a few more goals maybe or got some more silverware, to be fair, he did win the Portuguese title. But I will say Viktor Gyökeres could be a little bit higher, but could also be a little bit lower. I will give him the number 19 though. Moving on to, I believe, the only center back on the list, it is Virgil van Dijk. I put him in 18th place. I will say it's a little bit unfortunate that Alessandro Bastoni did not make it onto the list. Virgil van Dijk is pretty much the only center back on this list, and to be fair, he is the best center back in the world. But I mean, I think Bastoni and Inigo Martinez both had a shout to be here. I'm a little bit biased, but of course, neither of them are there. So let's focus on Virgil van Dijk, who did win the Premier League title with Liverpool and was a crucial part in it. He was a captain. He was an absolute leader. Scored a few goals for them as well. And while in the Champions League was left a little bit to be desired, of course, crashed out in the round of 16. Again, it was to PSG, a very solid side who eventually won the whole competition. Van Dijk was still influential and crucial to this Premier League title charge that Arne Slot in his first season was able to do, and you got to give credit to him. So Virgil van Dijk, I think a solid place for you, and a respectable place should be this number 18. Number 17 is a player that moved halfway through the season and did end up winning 5 trophies, of course, with PSG. I'm talking about Ivica Kvaratskhelia. He was a fantastic player who, while not the most influential in terms of direct goal contributions, he was influential all around. He was an amazing dribbler, very fast, very smart, and just overall came in clutch with a few crucial goals that I love to see. He scored some of the best goals I've seen in the Champions League, especially last season. I don't remember his exact stats, but he also helped Napoli stay in a pretty strong title race before he left, and then he eventually joined PSG to win some more trophies. Hence why he deserves to be in this conversation and deserves to be, close to that top 15 spot. Not quite, but still in a conversation maybe. Next up is his teammate, and unfortunately, I do have to say he was one of the worst players in that midfield, and that is such a bad way to say it. I shouldn't even say that. He was a fantastic player, had a phenomenal season. I'm gonna go with Fabian Ruiz. Yes, I say worst in the midfield because you're thinking about the likes of João Neves and, of course, Vitinha. They were phenomenal, and below them was Fabian. He had a phenomenal season, just a little bit under them too. Unfortunately, they did get more of the spotlight. He does more of the rough work, a little bit less glamour, but he still was crucial. I mean, we cannot forget about the season he had. We cannot forget about the Euros he had with Spain. Of course, that counted towards the 2024 Ballon d'Or, but still, you cannot forget about that. He was phenomenal in that campaign as well. But for PSG, he did what he needed to do and did a really good job at it. So you have to give him the credit, you have to give him the points. Hence why I think he should be in that conversation to make that top 15. Not quite for me, but could definitely be a few places higher. And then just above him, I do have to give it to, in my personal opinion, a little bit more of a better midfielder who had a little bit more of a better season for a side that unfortunately went trophyless, but I will say Declan Rice is in the place just above him, does make the top 15. He had a phenomenal season, and who can forget about the big moments, especially the big moment that he created against Real Madrid, the 2 free kick goals that he did, and just overall had a man of the match performance in that quarterfinal leg. Not to mention a really good performance in the leg after that. He did a phenomenal job ensuring that Arsenal progressed to the semifinals to face PSG. And overall, we will take that. I think Declan Rice was arguably the best player for Arsenal and deserves to get the plaudits that, maybe some midfielders don't normally get. Hence why I have him so high up. Going back to Paris Saint-Germain, I am going to go with Achraf Hakimi. I wanted to put him a little bit higher, but I have to say he was on the lower side just based off of the other players' performances. I think he was very good. He was one of the best fullbacks, if not the best right back in the world. I will say there was a few other better right backs. I think Jules Koundé could have had a shout to be in the top 30, but thinking about it, maybe not. Just mostly down to injury. I think if he had a full-on season, without injury, I think Barcelona could have made it to the Champions League final, and then it would have been PSG versus Barca, and I think Koundé could have definitely made it in, especially to win that Spanish Cup up against Real Madrid. But regardless, anyways, let's focus on Achraf Hakimi, who had a phenomenal season, scored quite a few important goals, and got crucial assists to the likes of Ousmane Dembélé, Kvaratskhelia, Desiree Doué, and a few other players to ensure that PSG won as many titles as they did. So Hakimi, congratulations. Easily top 15, could be a little bit higher, maybe entering that top 10, but I would hesitate just a little bit. Same with the next player, as it is the only goalkeeper on this list, and if you don't already know who that is, it is of course PSG's Gigi Donnarumma, who has left to Manchester City. That was a very shocking twist for me, but he had a phenomenal season. Arguably the best goalkeeper, if not... No, yeah, I would be bold enough to say that he was the best goalkeeper last season. I know Alisson Becker's there, Thibaut Courtois, you have Emiliano Martinez, but it just has to be Gigi Donnarumma. I mean, he won a penalty shootout up against Liverpool, made some crucial saves against Liverpool in those crucial ties. I mean, against Aston Villa, against Arsenal, and even against Inter Milan in the final. He was absolutely star-studded. He was absolutely amazing. You have to give the credit to this man. He kept them in the game. I mean, against Aston Villa, if not for Gigi Donnarumma, it could have been a pretty different turn. I mean, PSG could have lost that, and Aston Villa would have been making it to a semi-finals. So I'm just saying, we got to be careful. We got to make sure that Gigi Donnarumma does get the credit that he deserves for the phenomenal season that he had. We'll see what he does in Manchester City, but he deserves at least a top 15 finish for this. Pushing top 10, but not quite. Finally, moving on to a different team, and we're going to Bayern Munich, in which we have Michael Olise. I think he was one of the best right wingers in the world. Of course, that's a tough position to be in because you have the likes of Mo Salah, you have Lamine Yamal, and you have Bukayo Saka. But I think Michael Olise was up there, in and amongst it, up against those three. he could have been top 5. He was arguably the 4th best right winger, and that is not an insult that I mean. I mean that as a compliment, because to be compared to the Premier League top goal scorer, one of the best youngsters in the world, and another solid Premier League player, and by solid I mean absolutely great Premier League player. I think that shows quality. I mean, in his first season for Bayern Munich, got a lot of goals, a lot of assists, and important ones too. He showed that creativity that was lacking when Jamal Musiala was out injured, and it just demonstrated by the amount of goal contributions that he got throughout the rest of the season, both in the Bundesliga and in the Champions League. I believe even Inter Milan was more scared of Michael Olise than they were of Harry Kane, who is, of course, a natural goal scorer. But regardless, Michael Olise, 12th place, I think, is very respectable towards you. Some people may have you lower, but I would have you in this spot. Maybe I would put you a little bit lower, but I'm going to keep it there. I like it there. Just below the top 10, I do have another PSG player. It is, of course, a second midfielder. We have João Neves. I think he was absolutely incredible for PSG. He was at times their best player. I mean, the hard work that this young man plays. He was debated with like some of the best players, some of the best midfielders in the world, with the likes of Vitinha and Pedri. I wouldn't put him into that caliber just yet. I think he's just below it, and that season that he had last season, I would say it's just below them. I think they both had better seasons, hence why I placed them just out of the top 10. But he can easily get in there. He can rival Vitinha, he can rival Pedri, but I think they win it out just barely. But João Neves overall phenomenal, especially now in this season. I believe it counts for the next Ballon d'Or for 2026. Watch out for it, because he could be in and amongst it again. But those 2 bicycle kick goals and then another banger to finish off your hat trick in that goal in that game, absolutely insane. I will definitely be keeping a closer eye on João Neves, because he is one to watch, that's for sure. So cracking into the top 10, I am a little bit biased, but I have to go with Robert Lewandowski. I mean, new manager at the helm, a former manager of his actually from Bayern Munich was Hansi Flick, and he was arguably at his best, hit his peak in his early 30s with Bayern Munich, while Hansi Flick was his manager. What do? You bring Hansi Flick to Barcelona, and what does Robert Lewandowski do? Goes back to maybe not his prime, but scores even more goals than he did last season, which of course was a little bit of a downslope for him. But he improved while everybody suspected that he wouldn't improve. He did a phenomenal job both in the Champions League and in La Liga, finally scoring over 100 goals, if I'm not mistaken, for Barcelona, and I couldn't be happier for him. Let's go, Robert Lewandowski. I would put him in the top 10. Maybe I'm a little bit biased. He could be a little bit lower, but I think top 10 is still a solid finish, and he deserves it, in my personal opinion. Just above him in the 9th place spot. It's funny because he actually wears the number 9. It is the final Real Madrid player on this list. It is Kylian Mbappe. While Real Madrid did not have a good season, Mbappe did. Mbappe did have a first good season, and it may not seem like it because of the season that Real Madrid had, but he did have a pretty decent season with a lot of goals that were scored, including a few goals up against Barcelona. While in his first game, he was offside about 12 times. Don't worry about it. After that, he was a constant threat for us, even scored twice early on in that final game towards the end of the season. You have to give him credit. Yes, they did lose the game, but Mbappe was phenomenal. I mean, he scored a hat-trick, didn't it? So, you gotta give it to him. But overall, Mbappe deserves to be in this top 30. He was Real Madrid's best player last season, without a doubt, and he was a European top goal scorer. So you have to give it to him as well. Kylian Mbappe, top 10, seems fair. Again, it was a little bit of a downward season for him, but still one of the best players overall in the world. I mean, when you're Kylian Mbappe, you're still one of the best players in the world, regardless of who you play for and how many goals you score, to be honest. But anyways, a little bit controversial, but in top 8, in this number 8th place, I do have Nuno Mendes. I am very high on this player. I think he is phenomenal. He was the best left back in the world last season. Alejandro Valde could be up there for second best. But sorry, I have to mention if Barcelona bias. But Nuno Mendes was arguably one of the best players in the world. I mean, he came crucial with assists, goals, and defended like nobody's business. You have to mention his heroics in that PSG campaign, and for Portugal, also won the Nations League with Portugal. You have to give it to this man. He was absolutely incredible. Better than Achraf Hakimi, it's debatable, but I would say that he was just last season. I think Achraf Hakimi is a better player overall, but I think the better season went to Nuno Mendes last season. It was close. Both of them won the same amount of trophies, but I think Mendes was a little bit more crucial to PSG's successes. But by a little bit, I mean very minute details. Same with Fabian and João Neves. It's getting real scary now as we go back to Bavaria, as we see Harry Kane finish in this top 7, as he is my 7th place spot. I think he was the best striker in the world. I just have to give it to him, or depends on what you say about Usman Dembele. Was he considered a striker? I don't consider him a striker, I consider him more of a winger, hence why I will say Harry Kane was the best striker in the world last season. In his second ever season with Bayern Munich, he finally broke his trophy drought, won his first ever trophy, which was, of course, the Bundesliga trophy, and he went on to score a lot of goals, just a lot of goals, honestly. And that's what you got to ask for your number 9, especially for a big team like Bayern Munich. Of course, even in the Champions League, was pretty decent, did score a decent amount of goals. In the Bundesliga, was the top goal scorer, if I'm not mistaken, and he keeps going forward. And maybe he can have an even better season now. Maybe Bayern push forward in the Champions League a little bit further. I mean, they crashed out in the quarterfinals to Inter Milan. I could be mistaken in saying that, but I want to say that that was true. But we'll see what Bayern Munich and Harry Kane can do next season. But I think Harry Kane is in a good spot right here. And approaching ever so closely to the top 5, but not quite, is another PSG player in the final midfielder of that midfield 3. It is Vitinha. I think he was the best player out of that midfield, and he deserves to be in with a shout of winning the Ballon d'Or, but not over the next 5 players. And you may have already known who are the top 5 players. Yes, you may call me biased with the players that I've chosen, but don't worry about it. I'll talk about them soon. But in my 6th place, I am going with Vitinha. I think he was the second best midfielder in the entire world this season. He could have been that best one. I just edge it towards someone else. But Vitinha, I cannot underrate and understate how well of a player and how good of a performance he put on for PSG, for Portugal, also won the Nations League with Portugal, and was just so influential to the PSG team. They may not have won all the trophies that they did if Vitinha wasn't in the side, and he was so crucial that he deserves to be considered for this Ballon d'Or and maybe even win it. I don't think he will, and I don't think he full-on deserves it. I think there's 5 other players that deserve it a little bit more, but he should be in the conversation. Speaking of in the conversation, I do have to give it to Pedri in 5th place. I think he was the best midfielder in the world last season. You have to give it to him. When Lamine, when Rafinha, when Lewandowski, when no one else was on fine form for Barcelona, who was the main player to take us out? It was Pedri. And even when they were on fine form, Pedri was still somehow the calm mind who delivered us to a win or a draw or saved us or put us back into the game by getting an assist, getting a crucial goal. I mean, I will not forget that goal up against Real Madrid to kick off the game. It was absolutely phenomenal. An assist by Lamine Yamal, but what a golazo by Pedri. And I will never ever forget of what Pedri did to help us get that comeback victory over Atletico Madrid, where we eventually won 4-2. I believe it was away from home as well. It was Pedri. He didn't get a goal or an assist for the goals, but what he did, he calmed everybody. He just pointed to his mind while we were losing 2-0 late into the second half, and he calms them down. He says, calm down, let's keep going, let's keep playing our game and push forward, try to score the goals that we can, and we ended up with 4 more goals to win that game. Crucial part of the season, and I gotta give it to Pedri. Best midfielder in the world, should be in the conversation of winning it. Doesn't, in my personal opinion, doesn't deserve to win it quite yet, but he could win one in a potential next season, in any potential future season, so long as things go his way and he performs at this top level as he normally does. In 4th place, you may already guess as to who it is. I am going to go with Mohamed Salah. Yes, I'm going with Mo Salah. I think he was the best player in the Premier League by far. I mean, he nearly broke the goal scoring record, nearly broke the assist record as well. I think he was close to getting 50 goal contributions in the Premier League in one singular season. Absolutely amazing. I don't have the stats pulled up right now, but I think he was phenomenal, crucial to Liverpool winning this Premier League title. He was absolutely on fine form, and I think if it wasn't for that crash out of the round of 16 to PSG, of course, the eventual winners of the Champions League, I think he could have won it. I genuinely think he could have won it. He was the front runner for the Ballon d'Or up until that crash out. And I still think he still should be in the conversation. That's why I have him in 4th, because of his individual brilliance that he had. And yes, he did die out a little bit towards the end of the season after losing to PSG, but he still contributed with a decent amount of goals, a decent amount of assists, and overall the influence that he had on this Liverpool side that won the Premier League cannot be understated enough, or cannot be stated enough, because he was absolutely fantastic, and you have to give him his credit. He if he wouldn't have slowed down as much as he did, if he did break those records for the Premier League, I think he should be a little bit higher, maybe even win it. I know the Champions League plays a huge factor, and in other trophies, yes, he wasn't that stellar either, but in the Premier League, he was absolutely on fire, and he deserves to, be in this conversation. Hence why I have him in fourth. I know some people may place him a little bit lower, but genuinely, I don't understand why he was just discarded immediately after losing to PSG. I know round of 16, a little embarrassing for Liverpool, I have to be honest, but it was PSG. And I think it helps his case the fact that PSG won the Champions League. But that's just my personal opinion. I have him in fourth, just below these last three players who were, of course, involved in the semifinals and final of the Champions League. Of course, they made it to win at least 3 trophies, all 3 of them. So, let's talk about the next one. In my bronze place, the third place, I do have a Barcelona player. It is Lamine Yamal. I know a lot of people are a little bit surprised at the fact that I have Lamine Yamal in third place. Some people may say that he deserves to win it, and he does. I think he does as well. I do have someone else, 2 other players higher than them, obviously. I think Lamine Yamal was absolutely phenomenal, not just in goal scoring or in assists, which, of course, he did a tremendous amount. I believe he got at least 39, close to 40. I think it was very close to that 40 mark. And imagine, that was just like his his first like full-on season, in my personal opinion. I think 23-24 was where he first started getting into the starting lineup, and I mean, he did it quite fast. But this season, wearing the number 19, I actually have his name and number on the back of this jersey right here. He was absolutely phenomenal. And I mean, he hit the post so many times, hit the crossbar so many times, and some of his teammates just did not put away the chances that he created, so he could have got a lot more. But with that being said, I think even beyond the stats, I think he was absolutely incredible. He was arguably the best player in the world at several points in this season, and arguably still is, even though he's injured right now. But I think he does deserve to win the Ballon d'Or, but I would slightly edge it to these other 2 players. But still, Lamine Yamal, I wouldn't be surprised if he won it. I don't think it'll happen. I think it'll be someone else. But Lamine Yamal is my third place for this one. So in second and first place, I'm going to talk about both of them. I'm not going to say who quite yet, but of course it is my Barcelona player, Rafinha, versus Ousmane Dembélé, former Barcelona player, of course. Ousmane Dembélé was voted as the best player in the Champions League last season. I don't fully agree with that. I think that Rafinha was actually better in the Champions League, but Dembélé was, of course, a crucial part to PSG's win. Arguably the best striker, depending on how you view it. I don't think he's a striker, so I mean, even if he played in that striker role, I'd still consider him a winger, so I'd say he was arguably the best winger in the world. Although, I think Rafinha was the best winger in the world last season. And overall, I think Dembélé was absolutely phenomenal. Tore it up both in Ligue 1 and all the competitions. I mean, they won the French Super Cup, the French Cup, the French League title, and of course the Champions League. And we're kind of close to winning the Club World Cup. And I believe they might have won something else, but I can't remember at the moment. But either way, PSG were the best team in the world last season. You have to give credit. And Dembélé was a crucial part to it. He was leading the charge, and he kept going forward. He kept scoring goals at crucial moments. Even when you think he doesn't deserve it, he did. And he definitely has Ballon d'Or potential, and he can definitely win it. I think he probably will win it based off of just France football, and I think eventually we will see. I think it's on Monday. Monday will show us who will be the Ballon d'Or, and I think it will be Dembélé. But we do have to talk about Rafinha, because I think he's gone a little bit under the radar after Barcelona's exit from the Champions League semi-finals. Yes, they lost to Inter Milan in a rather bitter way. I'm still very angry about it. But Rafinha was crucial to making it that far. I mean, he scored against Benfica. In that first leg, we needed it. We were 1 man down. It's 10 versus 11, and yet who was it that scored the crucial goal for us? Rafinha. Who scored a hat-trick versus Real Madrid? Rafinha. Who scored a hat-trick versus Bayern Munich? Rafinha. Who was an incredible player to score as many goals as he did, over 50 goal contributions across all competitions, and was arguably Barcelona's best player, who helped lead them to a league title, a Champions League semi-final, a Spanish Super Cup title, and a Spanish Cup title. It was Rafinha. Yes, we weren't in the Club World Cup, so it made a little bit of a detriment to us. but I have to say Rafinha was just so crucial. I think he was the best player in the Champions League. He had 21 goal contributions in the Champions League alone in what I believe 14 games, if I'm not mistaken. He was tied for the top goal scorer, but had 8 assists. Absolutely phenomenal. I think he was the best player in the Champions League over Dembele. While he was voted for the best player in La Liga, I will definitely take that. I think he deserved the Champions League a little bit more. Champions League best player in the season. But I think Rafinha is going to finish in second place, and I would put him in second place if I wasn't a little biased. I have to say it, I am biased, but I definitely do think Rafinha deserves this Ballon d'Or. Despite all my biases, I know Dembele had a fantastic, phenomenal season. I just think Rafinha was better. I mean, he was, despite the stats. See, some people will say, "Oh, it's because of the stats." No, I genuinely don't think it's just because of the stats. He performed really well. He created chances, worked hard on and off the ball, defensively and offensively. He played at left back at times, still plays at left back sometimes now, and he was so versatile, playing in attacking midfield, playing in left wing, playing right wing, and sometimes even as a false nine or as a striker at times. And like I said, also at left back. But still, Rafinha, I think, when you think back to the biggest moments, especially in the Champions League, who do you think about? Do you think about Dembele scoring a few goals, I think the biggest one that I can think of right now is the goal against Liverpool that helped them progress. But what about Rafinha's goal up against Benfica? What about the accidental goal that hit off of his head, but it's still a goal? What about his unfortunate non-goal where he hits the crossbar, hits off of Jan Sommer, and it goes in? It came down as an own goal by Jan Sommer, but it should have counted as a Rafinha goal. That would have taken him up to 14 goals in the Champions League, and he would have been the top goal scorer. The only other player to get the same amount of goals was Sergio Guirassy, and of course I put him a little bit lower, but still, he still had a really good season. But I have to say Rafinha was the best player in the season, and I think he deserves it more than Dembele. What do I think will happen? I think it'll be Ousmane Dembele or even Lamine Yamal to win it. I think Lamine Yamal has a bigger chance than Rafinha winning it. Of course, like I said with Mo Salah, I don't understand why Rafinha was absolutely discarded right after the Inter Milan game. I know we crashed out of the Champions League, but that's not the end of the world. Semifinals is not bad. Round of 16 is much worse, I understand that. But again, it was losing to PSG, who won the competition. Even if PSG didn't win it, it's still a very tough side, and they lost on penalties. Yes, Mo Salah didn't do much in the Champions League, but he deserves to be in the conversation. Same with Rafinha, especially with all the work that he put in, all the goals, all the assists that he came clutch in. I mean, he scored. No one will remember this, but he scored the third goal to put Barcelona ahead in the tie up against Inter Milan. Unfortunately, we didn't hold it, and we stayed in the semifinals, but gotta give it up to him. The Brazilian, I think, personally deserves it. I think Dembele will win it. Lamine Yamal will come in second. Rafinha or Mo Salah will finish in third. And then it'll be the other one, obviously. And then Vitinho will finish in fifth. And then maybe Pedri finish in sixth. But overall, that's my personal opinion. Those were my power rankings, or my rankings of the 30 nominees for the Ballon d'Or. I didn't go into too much depth or about like specific stats. I just thought about the player and the season that I remember based off of my personal opinion and my personal biases, of course. But let me know what you guys think down in the comments. Let me know who you think will win the Ballon d'Or. Let me know if you agree. Let me know if you disagree. And if hopefully you guys enjoyed. If you did, please like and subscribe. And I'll catch you guys in the next one. Thanks.